I never expected a black boy to change everything at my paralyzed daughter's lonely birthday. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air felt heavy, almost like the weight of my worries hung above us. It was Marissa's 10th birthday, and all I wanted was a smile on her face, a spark in her eyes. But instead, silence swirled around us like a thick fog. She sat in her wheelchair, her small hands resting on her lap, her gaze lost in the distance. I held my breath, trying to ignore the ache in my chest. The decorations seemed to taunt me, bright balloons and vibrant streamers that felt completely out of place in our quiet living room. Her little friends were supposed to come over, their giggles echoing. But only one showed up, and even then, she left early, her awkward glances making my heart sink deeper. Each tick of the clock felt like a countdown to despair. I wanted to scream, wanted to shake the universe awake and demand a miracle, anything to wipe that disappointed frown off my baby's face. Then, just as I thought we'd have to settle into another quiet evening, the doorbell rang. I rushed to answer, and there he was, a black boy, no more than 12 years old, with wild curls and a mischievous grin. He stood there, a skateboard tucked under his arm, eyes shining with a kind of energy that felt foreign in this desolate space. He asked if he could join the party. Automatic rejection tugged at my instincts as questions flooded my mind. Why was he here? How did he find us? I hesitated, nearly shutting the door. But then I looked back at Marissa. She was staring with a mix of confusion and hope. Something in her expression stopped me. I opened the door wider. Sure, I said, not even knowing what I had just committed to. The boy introduced himself as Sam. He waltzed in, shaking off the cool breeze that followed him, and everything shifted. The room felt lighter. He pulled out a deck of cards and began showing Marissa tricks, cartwheels of color flying through the air, quick flicks that made her laugh. I was dumbstruck. How could he make her smile so effortlessly? Every time she giggled, my heart leaped, aching and healing at once. I watched in awe. There was magic in that room, and it emanated from this boy. But then the laughter turned quieter. I could tell something was brewing in Sam. His smile faded into a look of concentration, as if the cards were holding memories he didn't want to share. The atmosphere shifted again, and I felt the weight of something unsaid. He leaned closer to Marissa, whispering something. I couldn't catch all the words, but I saw her eyes widen in surprise. And then, silence. The laughter was swallowed by an unsettling pause. Do you believe in miracles? Sam asked her suddenly, his voice thick with meaning. I held my breath. My heart raced. What did he know? What would he say next? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The silence stretched between them, a taut line that could snap at any moment. Marissa blinked, and I could almost hear her thoughts racing, searching for the meaning behind Sam's question. To me, it felt like a pebble thrown into a still pond, the ripples echoing far beyond the initial disturbance. Do I believe in miracles? She finally echoed, her voice trembling between curiosity and trepidation. The gaze they locked into each other held incredible weight. A raw connection born out of shared hurt and unspoken wishes. I felt every heartbeat, an echoing reminder of the life that had been haphazardly taken from my girl, a life filled with running, laughter, and birthday parties bursting with friends. For the briefest of moments, I was flooded with a mixture of hope and dread. What could Sam possibly mean? Did he have some insight I lacked? Would he mention a way to fix her, to light up the shadows that clung to her spirit? I fought the urge to interject, to pry, desperate not to ground this fragile moment in harsh reality. sometimes, miracles are just things we don't see coming, Sam continued, a thin smile threading its way across his face, albeit tinged with something darker. Like the way a skateboard can lift you off the ground or how you can do anything if you put your heart into it. Marissa's eyes went wide, reflecting an ember of understanding. It flared, then dimmed as she turned her gaze toward me. I knew that look. The deep-seated yearning to just be like every other child, to dance and play without the constraints that had held her captive. My heart ached as I saw a flicker of hope arise within her, a dare to dream even as she lived in a world painted in shades of gray that I wanted to shield her from disappointment, to wrap her in the wool of unwavering optimism. But how could I? My own beliefs felt so fragile right now, crumbling like old paint, unable to cover the splintering walls of our reality. You sound like you believe in them, Marissa finally replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Sam straightened a bit, the boyish confidence resurfacing as he shrugged off her doubts. I do, he said, eyes lighting up with passion. I mean, look at you. You're stronger than you think. Just because you can't stand up doesn't mean you can't soar. There it was, the small glimpse of hope we all craved for, nestled just beneath layers of struggle. Marissa seemed to inhale it, filling her lungs with a clarity that hadn't been there moments before. Like the sun breaking through storm clouds, she transformed, her determination illuminating the small space around us, but as quickly as her new light flickered, I sensed the storm gathering again, poised to strike. The laughter that had bubbled forth began to fade, as Sam's facade dissolved into something raw and poignant. He bit his lip, his gaze falling to the cards in his hands, as if they were suddenly too heavy to bear. Maybe miracles aren't about changing what's happening, he said quietly, almost as a confession. But instead learning to be okay with it. My mom, she always said that. But, I was always mad at her for that. Because some things, they just don't change. His words hung heavily in the air. A jarring reality check to all of us in the room. I didn't want to misinterpret the pain in his voice, but it felt distinctly personal, an echo of his own turmoil reflected in the humble confines of our party. There was a fragility to his spirit, one that mirrored my own. It was a reminder that our struggles had been intertwined in the most unexpected of ways, and in that moment of newfound connection, the front door creaked open again, slicing into our intimate bubble. I turned, startled, to see a figure standing on the threshold, shrouded in shadow. The air chilled with an unsettling recognition, a face I hadn't seen in years. A face I never wanted to see again. The tension in the room thickened, both Marissa and Sam turned to stare, confusion mingling with the unfamiliar vulnerability we'd just shared. My breath hitched in my throat. What was she doing here? Please, I just need to talk, her voice called out, breaking through the tension like a knife slicing through butter. The familiar warmth of my heart twisted into something darker, a cocktail of betrayal and unexpected vulnerability clouding my judgment. The moment of hope flickered and vanished as I stood frozen, caught in a tempest of emotions. I was left at a crossroads, flanked by promise and pain. Who would this new arrival bring into our fragile space? And more importantly, would I have the strength to face what shadows she might drag back into the light? The air crackled with an unresolved tension, heavy and palpable, as I stood facing this ghost from my past. It wasn't just her presence that unsettled me, it was the memories that washed over me like a crashing wave, pulling me under with their force. I struggled to breathe for a moment, the weight of everything, years of hurt and unresolved feelings crushing me. How did she have the audacity to show up now, on a day I'd hoped would be free from the past? Marissa's wide eyes shifted from me to the figure at the door and back again, sensing the storm brewing within me. Sam, ever the observer, began to fidget with the cards in his hands, his earlier buoyancy completely deflated. The open door behind her revealed the world outside, stretching away into the horizon, oblivious to the chaos unfolding within. Just talk. I scoffed, the bitterness lacing my words, betraying the turmoil in my heart. Just talk like you did before. My voice betrayed the tremor beneath as I took a step forward, the remnants of unresolved anger flaring up inside me. What could you possibly say that would change anything? Her face fell slightly, but I could see the determination in her eyes, a determined softness that reminded me so painfully of why I had once cared. I didn't come to fight, she said, her shaky voice barely breaking through the silence. "I came to apologize. To explain. Please, just let me in." I weighed the options laid before me, each one heavier than the last. I could slam the door shut and keep my daughter sheltered from whatever the woman brought with her, yet the ache of curiosity tugged at my heart. Marissa stood there, alive and curious, her gaze moving from me to her. "Is that Mom?" she whispered, a mixture of bewilderment and hope lacing her tone. The little girl who loved all things magical and sweet wished for a mother who could somehow step back into her life, and here she was. The moment I glanced back at Sam, it was as if time paused. I could see the understanding in his eyes, a silent agreement suspended between us, all while Marissa remained blissfully unaware of the emotional storm brewing beneath the surface. Sam, sporting that precious gentleness, took a step closer to Marissa, as if to reassure her that whatever was about to transpire might still hold a flicker of hope even in the face of shadows. "Will you let her talk, Dad?" Marissa asked, her voice so small yet steady. "Maybe she has something that could help." How could hearing from her help? I shot back instinctively, the frustration bubbling again. "She abandoned us. She abandoned you." "People can change," Sam murmured, reeling me back into the moment like a lifeline. "I didn't think I would, but I did." "Maybe he hesitated, knowingly treading a fragile path. "Maybe she deserves a chance to try." The shadows dancing on Marissa's face stirred a fierce protectiveness within me. I didn't want her to taste the bitterness that comes from unmet expectations and second chances handed too freely. My heart raced, caught between my love for her and my instinct to protect her from the collision that loomed. "What do you say?" My voice was a mere whisper as I turned to her mother, desperation threatening to seep into my resolve. The woman on the doorstep seemed to shrink beneath the weight of my gaze. "I've made mistakes, I know that," she said, her voice trembling like autumn leaves caught in a cold wind. "But I'm here because I want to be part of her life, if she'll let me." That I felt Marissa's small hand reaching out, instinctively seeking my comfort, her trust in me solid as a rock. But with the door hanging open, I was beholding two worlds colliding: the love I fought for and the heartache I'd tried to bury. "Please, Dad," Marissa said again, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, filled with hope like a neither here nor there dream drawing closer to reality. Something tender in her expression made me pause, and for the briefest moment, I saw her not just as my daughter but as a young girl desperate to rewrite her own story, and then I made my choice. "Fine," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "But only if you promise not to break her again." I gestured toward the door, not allowing myself to linger on what that decision might cost me. As she stepped inside, an emotion that felt dangerously transformative flickered between us, a glimmer of what may come to be. The door swung shut behind her with a heavy finality, the echoes of our past crashing into the fragile thread of hope we had momentarily stitched together. Sam took a step back, his cautious gaze still darting between us, sensing the impending storm. "I guess miracles come in all forms," he said quietly, grounding us with an unexpected smile. But as I stood in the thick cocoon of that room, my past trudged in beside us, carrying the shadows of consequences I wasn't prepared to face. The clock ticked toward inevitable confrontations, reminding me that hope was just as tangled as the pain of change. In that moment of uncertainty, I realized I had taken the first step toward what could either heal us or break us all over again, and I could already feel the tremors of both beneath my feet. I glanced sideways at Marissa, who wore an expression of cautious excitement. Her mother was here, and even with the shadows of their past looming over us, I couldn't deny the spark of hope that lit up my daughter's eyes. I could feel my own fear creeping in, as real as the dusty sunlight filtering through the window, warming the chill of the room. "Mar, do you want to?" I trailed off, hesitant about how to say what needed to be said. I wanted her to have what I never had, a chance to know her mother, however fraught with danger that connection was. "Yes," she exclaimed, her voice bubbling over like fizzy lemonade on a hot day. "Can we start now?" "Of course, sweet pea," her mother, the woman who had caused me so much pain, responded, her eyes shining with the reflection of my daughter's enthusiasm. It was a beautiful moment marred by a fog of uncertainties. "Let's sit," I suggested, motioning to the worn-out couch that had held me through countless sleepless nights. If we were going to do this, I wanted everyone in a safe space, even as that very space carried echoes of years gone by. With a mixture of anticipation and dread, I watched as Marissa settled herself between us, stretching her arms wide as if trying to embrace a newfound family that had never felt tangible until this moment. In a fragile voice, she prompted, "So, Mom, what have you been doing?" Her mother hesitated briefly, considering her answer, the air thick with what I could only describe as both vulnerability and hope. "I've been working on being better. Every day." It was a hollow statement burdened by suitcase-sized emotions. "I missed you both so much, and I wanted to be here. Really, I do." My heart was caught in a vice grip of conflicting emotions. There was the resounding desire to see my daughter happy, but that desire coiled with a possessive instinct to shield her from disappointment. "Can you tell us why you left?" Marissa's question cut through the air, simple yet palpable, bringing everything to a dizzying halt. The breath caught in her mother's throat as the weight of her past settled heavy on her shoulders. "It's complicated, darling. I thought leaving was best for you. Sometimes adults make bad choices, and I thought it would keep you safe, but it didn't keep me safe," my daughter replied, her voice steady but edged with pain. "I had to grow up without you." Her expression softened as she looked up at the woman who had once been a stranger to her. "I wanted to know you." The honesty in Marissa's gaze melted the wall between them, but I remained an anchor to reality. This exchange was layered, and while one fragile thread might shimmer with potential, the knots of hurt wove tightly around it. "That I know I can't change the past," her mother said, wiping away a tear that glistened like a fallen star on her cheek. "But if you'll let me, I want to be a part of your life now." Marissa beamed, but before I could respond, my phone buzzed like an alarm clock, jolting me back into the present. A text from Sam lit up my screen. "I'm at the park with my friends. You okay?" I felt a sudden rush of guilt wash over me for leaving him to shoulder the uncertainty without me. He was always there when the weight of the world was too heavy to carry alone. "Just a moment," I whispered, rising to my feet, hoping a moment of separation would provide clarity. In my brief absence, I overheard the soft crackle of voices mixed with melodious laughter. Marissa's laughter drew me back into the room, into the fragile magic that had started to unfold. Yet, I also felt the two worlds colliding again, one of hope and another carved from scars. Emerging into the sunlight outside, I took a deep breath, allowing the warm breeze to cool my frayed nerves. For that brief second, I felt the world shifting, realigning under the weight of my decisions. But my phone buzzed again, my heart skipping at the thought of Sam reaching out once more, and as I glanced down at the screen, my heart sank. The message read, "You need to get to the hospital. Something's wrong with your daughter's therapy appointment." That I froze, a deep foreboding settling in the pit of my stomach. The world tilted, and I instinctively rushed back inside, the laughter fading into echoes as shadows coiled thick and merciless around my heart. Marissa's fragile moment of discovery was now eclipsed by the uncertain weight of what news awaited me. "Sorry, Mar, we need you to come," I stammered, my voice cracking under the weight of dread. As I watched her smile dim and the light dimming in her mother's eyes, I knew I was shaking the very foundation of this tentative connection. My hands trembled as fear clawed at my throat. And as I glanced into Marissa's eyes, I felt the unsettling truth: we were caught in a storm that could either tear us apart or draw us closer together, and I had no way of knowing which one it would be. As I stood on the threshold of the living room, the air crackling with a tension I couldn't ignore, I felt like a failed guardian, tethered to a past that threatened to unravel our fragile present. The unease nested in my gut whispered frantically, what if this was the moment everything shifted, but not for the better? Marissa's eyes sparkled with the wealth of hope just moments ago, yet now they mirrored confusion and worry. "Mommy?" she asked, her voice thin, almost like a melody played on a shallow flute. "Is everything all right?" I knelt beside her, a desperate attempt to shield her from the anxiety brewing in my heart. "It's just a quick trip, sweet pea. We need to check something important." The lie tasted bitter, but I forced a smile, hoping to catch a thread of light darkening within her. Her mother watched me with wide, apprehensive eyes. "What's going on? Is she okay?" The tremor in her voice made it harder to breathe, and just like that, the opportunities of the day melted with the heavy anticipation of bad news lurking beyond the corner that I don't know yet, I admitted, the truth wrapping itself tightly around my heart. "I just need to make sure." Her mother turned to Marissa, and for a flicker of a moment, I wasn't the only one trying to hold everything together. "Honey, let's take a deep breath, okay? Whatever it is, we're here. You're not alone." That I felt the warmth of that moment, but it sang the same melancholic tune in my heart. The safety I so desperately wanted to provide was precariously balanced on a knife's edge. As I took Marissa's small hand in mine, I felt the warmth of love mingling with the icy claw of fear. "Let's get going," I encouraged, hoping that movement would help soothe the bitter ache puncturing my thoughts. That we journeyed to the hospital in silence, with Marissa occasionally glancing up at me as if searching for answers in the curvature of my brow. I didn't have any answers, not now. Her mother walked slightly behind us, a shadow of the unfolding reunion, pushed down by the realization that this moment might define their future. Arriving at the hospital felt like entering a different realm, a world where every sound echoed with the possibility of heartbreak. The sterile smell of antiseptic clawed at my insides as we stepped through the sliding glass doors, and the relentless beeping of machines lit an electrical surge of despair in the air. "Mrs. Thompson." A nurse approached me, her voice smooth but distant, as if she were offering me a chance to tiptoe through this intense emotional minefield. "You need to follow me. We've got some news about your daughter." My heart raced, a trapped bird trying to escape the confines of my chest, as I glanced back at Marissa. The trust gleaming in her awaiting eyes threatened to shatter the fragile connection I was clinging to so desperately. "Wait," I stammered, raising a hand to pause the nurse. "Mommy." Marissa's voice trembled slightly, laden with uncertainty. "What's wrong?" I bent down, catching her gaze. "I don't know yet, sweetheart. But you need to stay with your grandma for a bit." "I'll be right back," I promised. In that moment, as the unyielding fear settled onto my shoulders, I was taken aback by the sight of her mother stepping forward, the warmth of a soft smile barely reaching the edges of her worried expression. "You can stay with me, Marissa. I promise I'll take care of you." Marissa looked at her mother, hopeful yet hesitant. The suggestion of their growing bond sent another pulse of anxiety spiraling through me. Would this relationship be their sanctuary or a treacherous cliff? As I stepped away, the weight of isolation loomed large, an invisible wall closing in. The nurse led me through stark white corridors where every turn whispered secrets of broken dreams, and I could hear nothing but the hollow sound of my own footsteps. A pit of despair settled in my stomach. I was walking towards something terrible, and the thought alone clawed at my resolve. Within moments, I found myself at the child's winged daughter's sanctuary, now filled with uncertainty. "In here," the nurse gestured, opening the door to a room stripped bare of quiet comfort. The atmosphere shifted as soon as I stepped inside. Samantha lay against the pale sheets, small and fragile, the machines around her beeping in a rhythm that only deepened the vibration of alarm in my heart. I rushed to her side, cradling her hand, the familiar warmth somehow offering little solace against the icy dread closing in around us. "Mommy, don't cry." Her voice was ethereal, floating through the haze of fear that shrouded the room. I scoured her face, the sight of her eyes flickering with the utmost vulnerability ripping through my soul. "I am not crying," I lied, choking on my sentiments. "I'm here. You're safe." But even I could hear the tremor of doubt laced within my words. Samantha's brow furrowed, and she took a raspy breath. "Something feels wrong. I can feel it." Before I could respond, a sudden knock echoed against the door. I turned to see a figure silhouetted in the hallway, and as they stepped inside, my heart dropped. It was a tall, young boy, perhaps around the age of 12, with skin as dark as a starless night. His eyes sparkled with a fire that both intrigued and terrified me. He stood there with a hesitant kindness, overshadowed by the stark reality that sprawled before us. "Are you okay, miss?" he asked softly, and within me, that old familiar aching sorrow began shifting. Could someone so unexpected see the turmoil swirling within our world? "I am trying," I whispered, my voice barely a whisper. He offered a small, genuine smile that fought against the shadows in the room. You got this. She knows it too. As his words danced through the air, I felt something deep within my heart tentatively unfurl, a glimmer of resilience flickering amidst the uncertainty. But before I could embrace that moment of hope, another nurse stepped in hurriedly, summoning my attention. Mrs. Thompson, we need to discuss your daughter's treatment. Tension filled my chest, and as I looked at the boy, his eyes locked onto mine, a silent understanding blossomed between us. Instinctively, I knew my world wouldn't return to the same. This struggle could change everything. And as I faced this new storm, I couldn't escape the thought haunting meth boy didn't just carry kindness, he carried secrets too. The weight of unspoken truths loomed large, drawing anticipation like electric strings taut in the dim atmosphere, an unresolved conflict magnifying the storm brewing within our lives. Desperation clawed at my throat. Whatever was going on, it was leading us towards a revelation that might shatter everything or connect us in ways we never dared to believe. Either way, I could feel the winds of change whipping around us, and nothing would ever be the same again. The fluorescent lights flickered ominously, a harsh reminder of where I stood as I braced myself for what was next. The nurse motioned for me to follow her down the sterile corridor, each footfall heavy with unvoiced fears. I dared not look back at Samantha, those fragile breaths resting just beneath the surface of consciousness, a fragile lifeline that tied me to both hope and dread. With each step, the nurse explained the new plan for Samantha's treatment, words falling from her lips like stones dropped into a deep, dark well. I struggled to focus, the weight of my responsibilities crushing, while a new fear gnawed at my insides. What if these treatments made her worse? What if they couldn't help her at all? And then I thought of Marissa, who must be feeling as unanchored as I did. Mrs. Thompson. The nurse's voice broke through my clouded thoughts, and I met her steady gaze. I know this is difficult, but it's important to understand that we're doing everything we can for your daughter. Her kindness was a lifeline. Thank you, I managed, choking back the flood of emotion threatening to spill over, the worry for her well-being clawing at my heart. In my mind, Samantha's laughter echoed as bright and full of life, a painful reminder of what was at stake. After the rundown of procedures was done, I thanked the nurse and stepped back into the room. The boy was still there, now sitting cross-legged on the floor, watching Samantha with an intensity that startled me. I felt a pang of jealousy. How could he sit there so calmly? He was a stranger amidst our chaos. Do you know her? I asked, the words slipping from my lips before I could think better of it. He looked up at me, his expression brimming with a wisdom that surpassed his years. I have some friends here. We all help each other. He gestured around the room, as if to suggest that this space was more than just a collection of beds and medical equipment. It was a temporary community stitched together in the aftermath of turmoil. Friends? I echoed, pondering the notion and how desperately I wanted that sense of family, no matter how fragile. Yes. It's easier to get through stuff when you're not alone. His gaze softened, as if he understood the plight etched in every line of my face. I wish I could just make everything better for her, I confessed, my voice cracking under the weight of those words. What does it even mean to have hope in times like these? The boy tilted his head thoughtfully. Hope is like a plant. You have to water it even when it feels too dark for it to grow. Sometimes, you find it in the littlest things. I glanced at my daughter as he spoke, her small figure swallowed by mountains of blankets, and suddenly, the old photograph in my wallet came to mind, the one of Samantha laughing in the warm sunlight at her last birthday party. The little things, I repeated, feverishly searching for that spark of warmth in the bitterness that surrounded us. Yeah, he continued. Like how your daughter smiled at me when I came in, or how my friend made a paper airplane that cheered me up when I was feeling down. Suddenly, I found myself leaning in, eager for his perspective, my heart yearning for that piece of my daughter's light in this dark place. How did your friend help you? Sarah was scared too once, and made the best paper airplanes ever. They made us laugh, even when it felt like everything was bad. He paused, and I could see the flicker of memory cast across his eyes. Laughter is powerful. My heart twisted painfully at his words, the bond growing between us, yet I recognized a delicate line. And what if laughter is lost? He tilted his head, considering my question, uncertainty flickering across his face. You've got to listen. It never really goes away, just gets hidden. You can find it if you look closely enough. As he spoke, I felt a strange sense of reassurance, a gentle unfurling of my own heart, like the first hints of dawn breaking against the night sky. The boy stood for a moment, the weight of his compassion brushing against my burden. Suddenly, the door swung open, and the nurse returned. Interrupting our moment. "Mrs. Thompson, we need you in the consultation room for a moment." "It's urgent." My heart dropped like a stone. "Can I bring her?" I gestured toward Samantha, a sense of fear tightening my throat as the urgency clawed at me. No, I'm afraid we need to discuss this now. The nurse's voice was unwavering, yet my gut churned with unease. As I started to follow her out, I glanced back at the boy one last time. "What's your name, Levi?" he said, the name rolling off his tongue like a promise. "I'll be here if she needs me." I managed a weak nod before stepping through the door, the familiar knot forming in my stomach once more. Was Levi right? Was there truly hope buried beneath the surface of our family's anguish? The consultation room felt suffocating, filled with an air thick with expectations and fears not just of Samantha's condition, but of my own. Sitting down, I felt the weight of their combined gaze upon me, unyielding and resolute. "Mrs. Thompson, we've reviewed Samantha's case in detail," began the head pediatrician, the urgency in his tone driving a wedge of foreboding into my heart. "There are available options we weren't considering before, but they require additional risks. We need your decision today." The world swirled around me, dark clouds closing in, and I felt utterly lost. What did additional risks mean? Would they tear our family apart even more? I felt like I was standing on the edge of an abyss, and the only thing beneath was uncertainty. A sudden thought struck me, the boy's words echoed in my soul. What if hope could blossom from this very moment? But would I be strong enough to choose it, to protect my daughter? And just as I opened my mouth to speak, the scaling tension in the room shattered as Marissa's voice pierced through the crisp silence. "Mommy?" Her fragility could be heard from the hallway, and the urge to rush to her overwhelmed me. In that moment, I knew time was slipping away, uncertainty stretched taut like a thin wire ready to snap, and I stood at a crossroads with the power to change everything. I took a deep breath, caught in an emotional whirlpool of fear and determination. I had to decide quickly, or everything that mattered might be lost forever. With my heart racing, I prepared to confront the unknown, knowing that one choice could alter the trajectory of our lives forever. The air in the consultation room hung thick, a charged silence settling over the room as I looked between the team of doctors and my watchful daughter's nurse, whose eyes conveyed a blend of sympathy and urgency. My mind drifted back to the comforting words of Levi and to the laughter of Samantha that felt like a shimmering echo in my heart. Yet now, all I could feel was the weight of their expectations pressing down on me, threatening to snuff out my fragile spark of hope. Marissa's soft call for me lingered in the back of my mind, a subtle reminder that I wasn't just making decisions for Samantha, I was weaving the fabric of our entire family's future. With a trembling hand, I clutched the edge of the chair, bracing myself for the gravity of my choice. "Mrs. Thompson, the new treatment offers a chance," the head pediatrician began, his voice firm yet tinged with a vulnerability that caught me off guard. "However, it could also lead to serious complications. We need your decision quickly. Why are those complications not explained clearly?" My voice came out sharper than I intended, fueled by pent-up fear and frustration. I felt a sudden wave of vulnerability, realizing how terrified I was of losing Samantha. The mere thought was unbearable. The nurse stepped forward gently, her expression softening my sudden outburst. "We understand how difficult this is. But please know that every possible avenue is being considered in Samantha's best interest." A small part of me was desperate to cling to that sentence, yet my intuition screamed warnings. What if their best was not enough? Images of Samantha's bright smile contrasted against the sterile world before me, further tightening the knot in my stomach. "Just say the risks, please," I said, forcing my breath to steady as I tried to brace myself for whatever horrors lay beneath the surface. The head pediatrician exchanged a glance with the nurse before leaning in. "There's a chance that the treatment could exacerbate her condition," causing further complications that may affect her motor functions, or worse, the weight of those words bore down on me like a heavy shroud. My heart plummeted. I wanted to believe there was a light at the end of this tunnel, but they seemed to be only presenting me with shadows. And if we choose not to? I managed, my voice threading through the tension like a delicate thread. Stability, at least for now. But without intervention, we cannot predict how her condition will progress, he replied, his gaze steady but compassionately resigned that I closed my eyes, willing the anguish washing over me to recede. I thought of Levi and the fragments of hope and laughter he had shown me. I thought of the paper airplanes that soared with laughter, only to crash and fear how much of our lives was lived somewhere in between. Mommy Marissa's sweet voice floated around the corner again, fragile and uncertain. It coiled around my heart, squeezing tighter until I felt breathless. She needed me, too. She was still so young and confused by all of this. I need to find a way to help her, I murmured, feeling trapped in this limbo of indecision as reality closed in on me. With each passing second, it became more apparent that every moment wasted could be one lost forever, not simply to Samantha, but to our entire family. "They'll choose the treatment," I finally blurted out, my heart hammering, buoyed by an underlying hope I barely recognized. "Are you sure?" The nurse questioned gently, taking a small step forward, concern flickering in her gaze. "Yes," I said, though panic bubbled in my chest. "I believe it's the only way." The determination seeped into my voice, washing over the uncertainty that had bound me for too long. But just as I forced a smile, trying to mask the fear swirling within me, the door opened abruptly. In walked a doctor I hadn't seen before. His face was stern but kind, and as he gazed at me, I could sense something ominous behind his calm demeanor. "Mrs. Thompson," he began, his voice steady yet laced with urgency. "We need to inform you that there's been a development in Samantha's case, and I believe it's pivotal to our approach. My heart skipped a beat, the air in the room suddenly feeling cold. I glanced at the head pediatrician, whose face had drained of color, then at the nurse, whose supportive presence felt abruptly shifted to one of dread. "What do you mean?" I demanded, bracing myself for impact. That he took a deep breath, and I saw the shadows of uncertainty flicker across his face. "It involves her overall prognosis and a potential complication that was overlooked in her previous scans. I believe we need to discuss this before proceeding." My mind raced, the world around me spiraling into a dizzying blur. Just when I thought I was grasping onto a flicker of hope, the ground beneath me felt as if it were crumbling away. All the thoughts of laughter, the bravery of tiny hands folding paper airplanes, everything reached a breaking point as I held tightly to my resolve, which now felt perilously close to slipping away altogether. "Please," I whispered, pleading for clarity that felt so far from reach. "What's happening?" And as the world around me churned, full of fear and uncertainty, I clutched the edges of my destiny, teetering on the brink of hope and despair. The sterile scent of the room wrapped around me like a suffocating blanket, each breath a reminder of the impending storm. I sensed the weight of my choice wrapped tighter around me, just as the corners of my vision blurred with the raw, unrelenting fear of losing someone so integral to my being. The doctor's heavy pause hung in the air like an unanswered question, a tight knot of dread coiling in my gut. "Mrs. Thompson," he finally continued, his voice unwavering but his eyes betraying a depth of concern I hadn't noticed before. "There's an anomaly that appeared in the most recent scans. We need to be sure it's not an infection that has spread or another complication altogether." For an instant, I felt time stretch, the walls around me spinning as panic clawed at my insides. "What does that mean for Samantha?" I summoned every ounce of composure, but with each word, I felt the howling of despair lurking just beneath. "It means that we must reevaluate her treatment plan immediately. If it's what I suspect, delaying could lead to dire consequences," he stated plainly, yet my heart felt like it was being splintered by each syllable. The very mention of complications sent me through a turbulent array of flashing images. Samantha, once vibrant and full of wonder, now threatened by shadows I had desperately hoped to dismiss. "She's already in so much pain," I protested, my voice breaking, almost drowning in the swell of anguish that tightened around my throat. "How could this happen? She's supposed to be getting better." The nurse stepped forward, her hand resting gently on my arm. "Let's take one step at a time. We'll be here to explain everything and support you through these decisions, okay? I nodded mechanically, my mind racing faster than I could articulate my questions. I felt as if I were standing on the edge of a precipice, a relentless wind whipping around me. In the back of my mind, Marissa was waiting. Her innocent eyes with questions I might not have answers for. Can I see Samantha? I stuttered, needing to feel her presence a grounding force amidst this chaos. Perhaps seeing her would light some spark of hope. Of course, the nurse said soothingly. We can arrange that immediately. I took a deep breath and forced my legs to move, my heart drumming in sync with each step as the nurse led me out of the room. Thoughts spiraled through my mind. All those moments where Marissa insisted on being brave for her sister felt like echoes of a silent prayer. I could hear her innocent laughter in my ears, reminding me that beneath these shadows, love was still alive. When we entered the dimly lit room where Samantha lay, a wave of warmth flooded my chest. She looked so fragile, yet even in her stillness, an undeniable strength emanated from her small frame. I moved to her side, brushing the hair away from her eyes, my heart aching at how small and delicate she seemed. Hey, sweetheart, I whispered, choking on the words. It's Mommy. Her eyes fluttered open, a faint smile gracing her lips, igniting a flicker of hope that surged through my veins. Mommy, she murmured, her voice hoarse but accompanied by a spark of that contagious sweetness that made everything seem brighter. Happy birthday, my love, I managed, my voice breaking as I leaned down to kiss her forehead. I'm so proud of you. Can we have cake? She asked, a glimmer of mischief sparking in her eyes, almost as if the weight of the world surrounding us had momentarily lifted to reveal the happiness nestled within. Of course. I replied, my heart swelling. We'll have the biggest cake ever. But as the joy in the moment swirled around us like a bittersweet melody, the door creaked open again, and another figure stepped in. Levi. His face was marked with a mixture of determination and unease, the usual spark in his eyes dampened just slightly, but as he approached, the warmth of his presence bathed me in courage. Hey, I thought I'd come by and bring some positivity, he said, his voice steady but an undercurrent of worry flowing beneath it. In the midst of this chaos, he brought with him a breath of fresh air. I have something special I've been working on for Samantha's birthday, he continued, pulling out a small, colorful box I hadn't noticed before. There's a little surprise in there. He smiled, and almost instinctively, I felt my heart lift ever so slightly. What is it? Samantha's curiosity interrupted the somber tension in the room, her eyes lighting up as if a small crack of brightness had just pushed through the clouds above. Just a little something to remind you that even the tiniest things can bring joy, Levi said, looking at me for reassurance. As he unveiled the box to reveal handcrafted colorful cards folded into delicate shapes, I felt tears threaten to overflow. Each paper creation was a symbol of the laughter we had shared before the waves of darkness crashed in, and then it hit me, in this uncertain, tumultuous world, it was the little moments like this one that knit the fabric of our lives together. It was the hope, wrapped in kindness, that illuminated the corners of our fear. But before I could process this warmth, the atmosphere shifted again. A loud commotion erupted outside the room, the bustling of medical personnel and alarming beeps of machines, until the door swung open once more, this time quite forcefully. Dr. Richardson, we need you immediately. A frantic voice called out. Levi and I exchanged glances, a sliver of dread slicing through the air. Please, make sure they take care of her, I urged, my voice barely above a whisper, choking with emotion. As Levi nodded and rushed out, I felt the encroaching shadows begin to twist around me again. The threat of uncertainty loomed larger, and as I held Samantha's hand in mine, I felt as if the world I was trying so hard to protect was crumbling around us, disintegrating like the paper airplanes once soared into the sky. And for the first time, I realized this journey would not just be about fighting for Samantha. It would also be about finding the strength within to hope against the odds. But just when I thought I could gather the pieces around me, another voice called, drowning out my resolve. Mrs. Thompson, a new doctor, appeared in the doorway, his face veiled in urgency. We've identified a clinical trial that could be specifically targeted for Samantha. We believe it could have adverse effects, but it's created a promising pathway. My heart banged in my chest, hope and fear wrestling violently within me again. I needed to know more, yet part of me wanted to shield Samantha from the looming uncertainties that seemed to blur the edges of her birthday. Please, can we discuss this? I asked, my instincts flowing hot and cold through my veins. The doctor's expression grew somber, yet resolute. We need your consent immediately if we are to proceed, and in that moment, standing at the crossroads of hope and despair, I felt teetering beneath the weight of the world's pressing expectations. Would I allow the kindness and love we had forged to guide us, or would we succumb to the shadows enveloping our family? The choices laid ugly before me once more, and as I looked down at Samantha, her tiny fingers clasping mine, nothing felt more important than the decision that stood, shrouded in uncertainty, right at my feet. The steady rhythm of hope, fear, and unyielding love twisted around me, creating an invisible thread that connected me to my daughter in ways I never thought possible. Holding Samantha's delicate hand, I felt the weight of the doctor's words hang, heavy and menacing, in the air. The choice looming before me sparked a whirlwind of emotions, a tempest of dread and flickers of hope. Mrs. Thompson, the doctor's voice pulled me from my spiraling thoughts. This trial could offer a chance to significantly improve her condition. My heart raced. The prospect of treatment meant more uncertainty, more decisions that felt like life and death balanced on a string. What are the risks? I could barely muster the words. The thought of exposing Samantha to something potentially harmful gnawed at my insides. The side effects range in severity. It will require careful monitoring, he explained. That I swallowed hard, my gaze drifting to Samantha. There was a spark in her eyes that pulled me back from the edge. She might still be fighting, she might still want to face whatever battles lay ahead, and with every ounce of my being, I wanted to protect that spark. But my own emotional dark cloud threatened to stifle it. Are you going to be okay? She whispered, her voice breaking through my internal conflict. Always, sweetheart. Always. I reframed the softness in my voice, desperately searching for a way to light her heart while my own felt heavy with doubt. That's when Levi re-entered the room, a strange tension in his eyes but a reassuring smile on his lips. Everything's okay, they just needed Dr. Richardson for a moment. How's our birthday girl? Samantha beamed at him, her fragile existence brightening like a candle caught in a gentle breeze. He says there might be a new treatment. It could help me. Levi's gaze shifted back to me, searching my eyes as if to gauge my thoughts. I could see the turmoil mirrored in his own hope tangled with dread. That's amazing, Sam. Well, find a way to make it work, he responded, trying to bring levity to the moment. But the weight of the choices pressed on me like an iron anchor. Mommy, I want whatever will help me, even if it's scary, Samantha urged, her innocent conviction both inspiring and crushing. She was so brave, facing her next chapter with the perfect blend of trust and innocence. I wanted to show her that same bravery, but the fear loomed large. That I need you to wait just a moment, okay, love? I squeezed her hand gently, my thoughts racing between protecting her and allowing her to chase the flickering flame of hope. I have to make sure it's the right thing. The door creaked open again. A new presence entered. An unfamiliar boy, no older than 15, walked in with hesitant steps. His face was somewhat drawn, but there was a fire in his eyes that brightened the otherwise dim room. He carried himself with a quiet confidence, and I could feel the shift in the atmosphere as he looked at Samantha. Is this your birthday? He asked shyly, his voice warm and inviting. Samantha's face lit up, the worries of our moment temporarily forgotten. Yes. Do you want to have some cake with us? Her joy was infectious, brightening even my darkest thoughts. The boy nodded slowly, a smile creeping across his face. I would love to. I've actually been working on some magic tricks. Would you want to see one? He reached into his pocket, retrieving a single coin and skillfully flipping it between his fingers, the shimmery brass glinting in the low light. Samantha gasped in delight. Teach me. Can you show me how you did that? The boy stepped closer, captivated by her radiant enthusiasm. Sure. It's all in the wrist. Watching them, I felt the darkness that had wrapped me tightly began to loosen ever so slightly. There was something about this boy, this unexpected visitor, that illuminated a fresh perspectivian essence of resilience I desperately needed at that moment. Maybe hope wasn't just about finding answers but embracing the joy in the small moments shared between friends, however fleeting. With every laugh that erupted from Samantha, the walls I had fortified around my heart began to crumble, just for a moment. Here she was, alive and fighting, and for the first time that day, the unrelenting storm inside started to quiet, but the easing tide was short-lived. Without warning, the familiar urgency returned as another medical staff burst through the door, every face shadowed with concern. "Dr. Richardson needs to see you, Mrs. Thompson," a nurse urged, her tone tinged with panic that I felt my stomach plummet. "What's going on?" "Just please, come with us now," she insisted, urgency pressing against each syllable that I glanced back at Samantha, her face surrounded by this new warmth and the palpable moments of joy unfolding. "Stay with Marissa and our new friend for a moment, all right? I'll be right back." The words felt like a fragile promise that I followed the nurse through the bustling corridor, my heart pounding, uncertainty reigning supreme. Had something gone wrong? Was the world I had just started to piece together torn away again? As we approached the doctor's office, it dawned on me each step away from Samantha felt surreal, as if I was drifting further from the faint glimmer I had just discovered. Would there be more shadows waiting? Just outside the doctor's office, I hesitated as a guard of feelings warred within me. "Please just don't let her be alone," I whispered, hoping the strength we had built wasn't unraveling beneath our feet, but then, the door swung open, and the sight that met me was enough to freeze my heart. Several doctors surrounded a desk, their voices hushed but urgent. An unmistakable tension filled the room as I was handed a folder, containing what looked like test results. Levi, standing just outside the perimeter of fear, turned to me. His face was drawn, and I could see it mirrored in the new doctor awaiting a verdict. "What's happening?" he asked, anxiety evident in his eyes, but the information was still soaking inwards like escalation and aggressive swirled in my mind, anchoring my thoughts to the ground as fear clawed at my chest anew. And there, hidden within the words, was the most devastating twist of all. Samantha's condition was not only threatening her life but potentially worse than they disclosed. "Please, I need to know," I finally mustered, pushing the nurse's hand away, my voice steady despite the tremor of uncertainty beneath it, and in that moment, as the world around me felt as fragile as the memories of yesterday, I was left standing at a precipice once more, my heart and soul pleading for clarity in the tangled web of dreams and nightmares, watching everything I held dear slip dangerously closer to the unknown. The markers of time blared into a disorienting rhythm, a cacophony of beeping machines and hushed voices swirling around me like a storm. I stood there, clutching a folder thick with truth I was desperate not to face, my eyes darting between the fractured realities unfolding in those sterile walls. I could still hear Samantha's laughter echoing through the room, desperately clinging to that light in the darkness, but it was growing fainter. An ache bloomed in my chest that felt relentless, feeding off my fears that loss would swallow us whole. Levi stood beside me, uncertainty etched into his brow as he held my gaze. "What do we do?" he asked, a quiet panic threading through his voice, begging for direction in this chaos that crashed like waves against us. "Mommy," I heard Marissa's voice call from somewhere down the hall, filled with innocence and hope, and it sent a fresh wave of anguish numbing my resolve. I had so many dreams for both of my daughters. Could I bear to watch one slip further away? "This can't be happening," I whispered under my breath, feeling the panic rise like a tidal wave breaking against the fragile shore of clarity I desperately sought. The doctor cleared his throat, stepping forward, his eyes betraying the burdens he carried with every word he spoke. "Mrs. Thompson, Samantha's condition is deteriorating more rapidly than we anticipated. We need to act quickly if there's any chance of saving her." My heart thudded painfully against my ribs. "But, we can only pursue the aggressive treatment with informed consent." That I nodded towards Levi, drawing in a shaky breath as I felt the ground beneath me shift. The choice before me felt like an insurmountable mountain. I didn't want to subject her to more pain, to hardened realities that would echo in our hearts forever. But neither could I risk losing her completely. The weight of every decision now rested on my shoulders like a suffocating blanket. "Can we have a moment?" I croaked, my voice barely above a whisper. As the nurse led the doctor out, I turned to Levi, desperate for clarity, for strength. "What if this treatment changes her and it's not for the better?" I gazed into the depths of his understanding, searching for resolution amongst the turmoil. He stepped a bit closer, his eyes fierce yet gentle. "Sometimes, battles aren't just physical, they're about showing our love until the end. If we love her, we fight. We hope. Even in the pain, he said, each word wrapping around my heart with fragile resolve. A tear slipped down my cheek as I weighed his words, torn between the fear that clawed at my insides and the unrelenting love for my daughter. An army of emotions clashed within me, suffocating me with their intensity, yet through that chaos, the melodies of laughter once shared surfaced with whispers of resilience that I couldn't let fear dictate our fate. Samantha deserved to know love was fierce, too. Okay, I found my voice, clarity slicing through the haze. I turned toward the door, purpose injecting each step forward, every heartbeat echoing the prayers I clung to with clenched fists. When I returned to Samantha's room, the atmosphere felt charged, like the calm before a summer storm. Her fragile figure lay beneath layers of sterile sheets, darkness licking at her edges. But with every step I took, I strived to carry the weight of all our laughter, all our hope, with me like an unbreakable shield. Mommy, she exclaimed, her eyes widening with that wild spark I cherished. Did you bring the cake? I knelt by her bedside, absorbing her innocence, feeling a bittersweet tether snap tight inside of me. A big one, sweet pea. I forced a smile, drawing warmth even in the uncertainty encasing us. But first, I need you to listen closely. As I shared my intentions, I felt her gaze lock onto mine, searching for truth amongst my trembling words. There is a new treatment that could help you, but it might hurt for a bit, and I need to make sure you're ready to fight, I said, forcing the words past the lump in my throat, unwilling to let fear tarnish this pivotal moment. Her brows furrowed, but then, slowly, her small hands reached out, the warmth of her fingertips connecting with mine. I want to fight, Mommy. I want to soar, she whispered, her resolve igniting a fire within me. And just like that, against the turbulent backdrop of despair, Samantha became my anchor. I knew that my decision would unveil unknown struggles, but in that fleeting breath, I also realized each struggle bore me an inch. It wove us tighter, cradled us in love that existed even in the midst of storms. As I filled out the consent forms that would assign our future, my heart soared with her spirit carrying me, pulled by a thread of hope woven tightly by her. It was contagious and beautiful, ominous but filled with possibility. Just then, the door creaked open, and Levi stepped in, his face a blend of concern and hope, a reflection of our shared journey. I could see it in his eyes. He believed we could face the uncertainty together, that we could weave through the chaos and emerge stronger. They wheeled Samantha out of the room, whispers of reassurance and unity surrounding us, and as I grasped the edges of her feelings, the memory of laughter illuminated my heart, a promise whispered through every moment shared. As they prepared her for treatment, I leaned over her fragile frame, drawing in that warmth, the familiar scent of her childhood wrapped in soft whispers. No matter what happens, Sam, remember this: your spirit is something no shadows can dim. We will find our way back to the light, I promise you. There, in that dimly lit hospital room, amidst the chaos, I felt the weight of my decision solidify. Hope was not merely a spark, it was an unyielding force that could revive and reunite us even amidst the encroaching shadows. And as they wheeled Samantha away, I held my breath, knowing the path before us twisted into the unknown, yet tethered to our love and the promise of laughter that awaited us on the other side. In the end, it would not just be about the battles we fight, it would be how we choose to embrace the bells of hope that resound amid our deepest fears, a melody echoing in our hearts that would never fade. Thus, we journeyed toward tomorrow, a delicate dance between uncertainty and love, and as the door swung shut behind them with a soft click, the final realization dawned: sometimes, all it takes to endure is the belief that together, we can truly conquer anything that us. Oh, I whispered to the darkness surrounding me, together, we will learn to soar.